Last night in the NHL kicked off the beginning of the Stanley Cup Playoffs. We had 5 games on the schedule and there was all kinds of terrific action and some incredible results. We're going to recap the first night of action coming up next. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. We review and discuss all 31 NHL teams. So if you're a huge hockey fan, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss anything. So last night's NHL action was incredibly fun to watch. All kinds of terrific games going on. We had 5 games on the schedule. The playoffs really are the best time of year and the best quality of hockey you're ever going to see out of the NHL. So let's dive in here and recap what we saw last night on the opening night of the Stanley Cup Playoffs. The first game I want to talk about is the Tampa Bay Lightning battling the Columbus Blue Jackets. Now, of course, the Lightning were the President's Trophy winners. Clear runaway, the top team in the league, most points and best production all year. Columbus barely squeaks into the playoffs here near the final day or two of the season. So we basically have like a 1 versus 8 type of scenario here. Columbus is certainly the underdogs going in, and things kind of got off to a rocky start for the Columbus Blue Jackets. Sergei Bobrovsky looked a little shaky, in my opinion, early on, and Tampa Bay jumped out quickly to a 3-0 lead. After the first period of play, Tampa's off to a 3-0 lead here. They're kind of coasting along. Everybody's kind of assuming here that this is not going to go well for Columbus, and Tampa is going to hook things up here and just hang on for the first game victory. However, things started to shift a little bit in the second period. I think John Tortorella kind of got his team settled down and pumped up a little bit to go out for the second period. They did look to be like a different team, come out a lot stronger, and they were able to battle back, and by the end of the second period, they had closed the gap down to a 3-2 lead. Going into the third period, things continue to go even more into the Columbus's favor. Into the third period, Josh Anderson on a shorthanded goal ties things up and makes it 3-3 to make things very, very interesting. And not too long after, with about 5 minutes or so left in the third period, defenseman Seth Jones capitalizes on a great play from Artemi Panarin on the power play to put this team up with a 4-3 lead. Of course, Tampa Bay tried their best to come back and tie things up here, but they did fall short, and Columbus goes in after being down 3-0 and steals game 1 from Tampa, and certainly makes this a very interesting series. Now, I will caution you, of course, this is only one game, but at the same time, game 1 of Stanley Cup Playoff series is very important. Oftentimes, I believe the percentage is around 69 or 70% of game 1 winners do go on to win the series at that high percentage of the time. Plus, if they're the home ice team winning, it even goes up even more. Now, Columbus, of course, was the road team in this case, but winning game 1 generally is very, very important to winning this series. But of course, remember last year, Columbus went up 2-0 on Washington, almost went up 3-0 because they had a couple overtime games there, and the Capitals stormed back, took over and won that series. So hard to say if we'll have the same type of result this year or not. Columbus is certainly a different team. They've added a lot to this roster since that series, so we'll see what happens here. Certainly if you're Tampa, I would not be panicking, but if you're Columbus, I wouldn't be getting too excited just yet. But game 1 is extremely important in these series. Now, jumping over and taking a look at the Winnipeg Jets and the St. Louis Blues. This was a very, very tightly contested matchup. We expected probably a low-scoring affair. You have 2 good goaltenders in Jordan Binnington and Connor Hellebuyck. Obviously, Jordan Binnington had a little bit of a controversy going on earlier in the day. A reporter for the Winnipeg Free Press had dug up some information on Binnington, that things that he had posted on Twitter like 5 or 6 years ago, and really tried to make his character not look so good. I'm not going to get into what he was saying. You can certainly find the information online if you want to go find it. So Jordan Binnington didn't allow that, though, to be a distraction for him. He was still in the zone. Played extremely well here. Patrick Laine looked terrific for the Winnipeg Jets. There's a lot of question marks coming in around him. Obviously, he didn't have the great kind of regular season that many people were expecting, himself included. Certainly had a number of times throughout the year where he had long droughts without scoring, but he looked fantastic. He did score the lone Winnipeg goal. The Blues did go on to win this game 2-1, but Laine looked fantastic. Now, Laine not only scored, but he had numerous other great chances. He rang one off the post as well, and Patrick Laine was looking like their best forward out there for a big part of the game. So that's good news as well for Jets fans. But obviously things were remaining very close. The Blues kind of dictated the style of the game here, and the Jets weren't able to kind of open up like they were hoping to. But into the third period, things were kind of shifting more in St. Louis's favor. Winnipeg was not able to get the zone time that they were hoping for, and then they ended up getting the tying goal here from David Perron, and then not too long after, with about 5 or 6 minutes to go, they got the winning goal from Tyler Bozak. So a couple of veterans coming through for the St. Louis Blues for sure, capitalizing on some opportunities in the Jets zone, and the Jets were not able to come back and tie it, although they did come very, very close. Mark Scheifele had a golden opportunity in the final minutes of play here, but Jordan Binnington absolutely robbed him to save that game. Binnington, for his playoff debut, I thought looked absolutely awesome. And if he's able to continue that kind of play throughout this series, the Jets are going to have a very difficult time. Obviously, like I said, based on this series and how it's going to go, I would not be surprised to see a low-scoring affair. But the Blues go into Winnipeg and steal Game 1 from the Jets. Now, of course, some people might call that an upset, but these two teams are actually very closely matched. Very little difference in the standings, and it's really hard to say, no matter who wins this series, that either team's really going to be considered an upset. Now, the Dallas Stars go into Nashville and steal Game 1 as well for another road team picking up a victory here. It was 3-2 was the final score. Pecorine and Ben Bishop were both played pretty decent for their teams here. Roman Josi opened the scoring in the first period for Nashville, and after the first period of play, they had a 1-0 lead. But over the second and third periods, Dallas stormed back and scored 3 unanswered goals between the second and third period, including goals from Miro Heiskanen. It looks as though he had 2. They later changed that and credited one of them to Alex Radulov, and the third goal was scored by Mats Zuccarello. PK Subban was able to add one later on in the third period for Nashville to make it interesting at 3-2. The Stars were able to hold on here. So obviously we see a trend. There was more road victories last night than we had home victories. So obviously teams like Dallas and St. Louis starting off on the road, as well as Columbus, all picking up big victories to take Game 1 on the road in their respective series. Now, another series that was very fun to kick off last night was the New York Islanders and the Pittsburgh Penguins. The Islanders came out with an absolute roaring bang and scored right away. However, that goal was called back due to an offside challenge. After watching the play, on the replay here, you could tell it was clearly offside, but the referees did miss it. Everything was happening so quickly in the beginning. That would have been awesome for the Islanders to be able to keep that goal, but they were able to bounce back and score not long after, so they did get the first goal of the game anyways, and it was still relatively early into the first period. Pittsburgh was able to come back and tie it, and it was a very much back and forth game all night, exchanging goals, the Islanders pulling ahead, the Penguins catching up until it went to overtime, which is where the Islanders ended up finishing things off here with a goal from Justin Bailey. But I will say Robin Lehner was absolutely fantastic for the New York Islanders. He made a ton of saves. Pittsburgh greatly outshot the New York Islanders last night, and Robin Lehner had to be huge and outplay Matt Murray, and I think it's fair to say that he certainly accomplished that last night. We saw some big goals from the Islanders, including guys like Jordan Eberle and Brock Nelson getting on the score sheet. Obviously, Phil Kessel, Evgeny Malkin, Justin Schultz scored the goals as well for the Pittsburgh Penguins. So even though it was a fairly close game, obviously the Islanders came out early on. They were throwing lots of body checks around. The crowd was really into the atmosphere. For the Islanders' home crowd, it was absolutely awesome, which really helped propel them here to victory. It is going to be a very fun series to watch as well. The final game of the night featured the San Jose Sharks doing battle at home here against the Vegas Golden Knights, and they were able to pull out a 5-2 victory here. Obviously, Martin Jones was a big question mark coming into this series. Obviously, last year in the playoffs, his save percentage wasn't great. He didn't have a very solid 18-19 regular season. His numbers are still down, but he was pretty solid last night, only allowing 2 goals to Vegas. I thought Erik Karlsson looked really solid as well, certainly with some question marks around his health, or even if his health was fine, would he be rusty where he missed a big chunk of the end of the regular season? But I thought he looked pretty solid. He picked up a couple of assists and was a big catalyst for their offense last night. And Karlsson seems to be pretty close to normal Erik Karlsson form. So it's a very solid sign here for the San Jose Sharks. The first goal of the game kicked off with Joe Pavelski scoring off of his chin. Obviously, that had to hurt. Pavelski ended up going off the ice for medical attention. Did later return in the game with a different shield on his mask. So obviously, Pavelski seems to be okay. Obviously, it's not the kind of way you want to score goals, but you take them all, certainly in the playoffs for sure. Later into the second period, the Sharks were able to take a 3-0 lead. So things obviously get off to a much better start for San Jose than Vegas. Mark Stone later scored to make it 3-1, but then Evander Kane answered for the Sharks, put him up 4-1. Stone later scored again, have a second goal of the game, make it 4-2. and then they add an empty netter as well from Thomas Hertl for a 5-2 victory. Obviously, that is the kind of game that the San Jose Sharks were looking for in Game 1. I know the Vegas Golden Knights appeared to be a little bit disappointed with their effort and results. It's not kind of what they were hoping for. This is another series as well where you can't really say there's an upset either way. These two teams are really closely contested. They did battle last year in the playoffs with Vegas coming out on top. I'm sure the Sharks would love to get some revenge on Vegas. Obviously, this is a team that is built for Stanley Cup contention. They have some pretty solid veterans over there looking to snatch the Stanley Cup before it's all said and done, including Joe Thornton and Joe Pavelski, and as well as like Brent Burns, Erik Karlsson. They have a really solid team on paper. Even though they didn't play the best down the stretch, they had a pretty solid effort last night to get off to a great start to their series here against the Vegas Golden Knights. With 5 games getting underway last night, the other 3 series kick off this evening, so we have another great night of NHL hockey here to look forward to, including the Calgary Flames against the Colorado Avalanche, the Boston Bruins against the Toronto Maple Leafs, as well as the Washington Capitals doing battle against the Carolina Hurricanes. Let me know as well, what game were you most excited about last night, and which teams were you most surprised by to kick off the Stanley Cup Playoffs? If you're new to the channel here, I hope you consider subscribing. We cover all 31 NHL teams, and there's plenty of content here for all hockey fans to enjoy. So if you're new, hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up before you go. I would appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and we will catch you next time.